writing for PARI for more than 3 years now. And sometime about 2 years ago, we started working on PARI education. So I'll just tell you a little bit about what we mean by PARI education and what is the PARI education pedagogy. So at the heart of a PARI, as many of you know, is an online journal. It documents and archives stories of rural India, right? But at the heart of PARI is the idea of good storytelling. Every PARI story is actually really well told. It's a compelling read, and it traverses many different disciplines. So it could be about gender, but it'll also talk about farming, about resources, and so on. And at the heart, like I said, of a good PARI story is really good storytelling. And that's because it's founded by P. Sainath. And as Shobha said in the beginning, Sainath is a master storyteller. And it's that legacy of storytelling that, is carried on in PARI. And if you look at good teaching is also does have good storytelling at its center. If you were to learn about the law of physics from a textbook versus if a teacher stood up and told you and actually gave an anecdote about the first law of physics, you'll obviously remember it much better. So we thought, why not, use these two? I mean, Sainath has been teaching in many universities. Many PARI journalists are also teachers. So it's not like this was a new idea. PARI has already been used in schools and colleges across the world. So we said, why not formalize it a bit? So Vishakha and I, we were the PARI team, and we would go to schools and colleges, and we would speak to young people. We would speak to teachers about what happens in rural India. We'd show them the diversity of rural India, and it was a journey for us also to understand that what do students in India really understand about rural India. They mostly have stereotypes in their head about what rural India is like. So it was great fun actually busting those stereotypes and hearing from teachers that, but before you tell the students, please tell us also, we don't want to look foolish in front of our students. Or we had students as young as 12 saying to us that I'm really embarrassed, I didn't know about this about my country. So that's what we do in PARI education, is we take PARI stories, which are essentially, stories with a compelling read, well researched, really well edited. We have very strong editors at PARI who, make sure that they're accurate, they're relevant, that every word is sound and in the right place. Sharmila Joshi heads PARI's editorial, and there's a lot. When she admires a detail, we know, okay, that's a great detail that we have in PARI. So we bring all these little details, all these little things with us when we open these stories out to students as young as 11 or as old as 24. There's a great amount of learning that happens. It's interdisciplinary, it's across subjects. When we talk, for example, we talk about poverty, we're not just telling them, poverty is a number or poverty is a figure, there's a line below which and above which there's poverty and there's no poverty. We're saying this is the story of a person, this is the life they lead. They move from construction site to construction site. They don't have a home to go back to. Their children will never go to school because they don't live long enough in one place. This is what poverty looks like in India, right? So that is it's a great way of humanizing textbook concepts, of getting students to understand. When we talk about agriculture, for example, students say they don't know where their food comes from. They don't know who are the farmers, what are the lives they lead of people who grow their food. For example, Aparna's story on Chandra is one that we use very often. It breaks two stereotypes for students. One is that it makes them understand that a farmer is not just a man. They understand that, we tell them most of the farming in India is done by women. And then when we show them the story, they understand so much more about what being a woman in rural India could mean. So this is the essence of what we do in PARI education. But we decided to take it further, and we started getting schools and colleges to engage with us a little more. We said, why don't you get your students to do projects which are based in rural India? For example, they could do a set of projects on migrants, which is what we've carried in PARI education. Today, we have a story about railway hawkers. So that's done by a student from JNU. And these are really, so it's really interesting to see how students, schools, colleges are getting interested in engaging a little bit more with rural India, finding out who are the people behind those stories, who are the people behind that number of, let's say, migration. You understand the concept, but have you met any people who actually migrate? So this is what we do in PARI education. And if you go to the PARI website and one of the tabs on top, if you click on it, it says PARI education, you will come to the site which shows you all work on PARI education has been done by students. All illustrations have been done by students. Photographs mostly are taken by students. So this is really a student-led website. And this is the mandate of PARI, in which we want our students to, write about their own lives, to write about their communities. We have a wonderful story written by a girl from a begging community who's the first girl to pass class 10. And she's written her own story, and we've carried it on PARI education. So it doesn't matter whether you're a student in rural India or you're in an urban India. We want you to begin documenting, things around you. And of course, we realize that there's a huge divide between, rural schools and urban schools. Education in rural India, to begin with elementary education, there are 9 lakh vacancies for elementary school teachers, according to the education statistics at a glance by the Ministry of Education. So government schools in rural areas just don't have a teacher, which is what I mentioned in the story in Coming Home. The dropout rate from primary to secondary school jumps 4 times to 17% in rural, in middle school in India. So what are all, so the differences between a government school in rural India and what it's doing versus, this huge rush towards global education. Every school has an international attached to its name. And now technology is seen as a new answer to education, right? So these are all the new things which are coming up about education. But we're saying, hey, one sec, we also have something that we can offer you. We can offer you a different kind of an education in which you learn about things around you. You learn about your country. Yes, it's important to know about how many square kilometers of Arctic ice is crumbling due to climate change. But it's equally important to know 200 kilometers from you, how are farmers facing climate change? How are fishermen facing climate change? So these are the kind of stories that we use in PARI education to teach, to inform, to get students to engage more with rural issues.